Started about a month after me, was known for Ball Blazer. This is Peter Langston, who was the head of the group. That's me. Lauren Carpenter, who really wasn't in the group, but I'll go into this in a moment. He was kind of loaned to us. And Gary Winnick, who was our artist. And fortunately, for the first few months I was there, they didn't have our building ready, so I got to be Lauren's office mate. So the plan was to start by, first week they wanted us to do games for the 2600. We were able to convince them that there wasn't much we could do to advance the state of the art of computer gaming with that machine. So they let us go to the Atari 5200, which is essentially identical to the 800. And the plan was to build 2 throwaway games. We were actually kind of nervous because we had this pretty big thing to live up to. We were this is the company that brought you Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, and now we're going to make a computer game, and everyone was either going to hope that we'd fall flat in our faces, or they were expecting us to do miraculous things, and that was very scary to be in that position, especially considering that none of us had ever really done a commercial game before. We were all, Peter was a research scientist, Dave Levine, it comes straight out of college. I think he did do some work on some multiplayer games, but not commercial games. And I did a couple of mostly game conversions, but not anything major that was actually in the market that we authored. So by saying they're throwaway games, that made it a little bit safer, because then we could work on them, and if they weren't great, we didn't think, no one would force us to put them out in the marketplace. So if they're any good, we'll publish them. Otherwise, it was a good learning experience to get going, get our tools in place. So my game was going to be kind of a Star Raiders on a planet. Star Raiders, for those of you who know the original Atari games, was basically a point-of-view space game where you see star fields coming towards you. I wanted a landscape. It was going to be Star Wars-like, but it couldn't be Star Wars. In fact, for the entire time I was there, we were not allowed to do Star Wars games, which is ironic, since that's all they do now. And at the time, we were very resentful, because we said, well, we're in the Star Wars company. You should at least let us do some Star Wars games. They said, no. We get $1 million as soon as someone licensed one of our games. Why should we waste it on you guys? We're guaranteed this money if we have someone else do it for us. So they have Parker Brothers and Atari and all these other companies doing their games for Star Wars Universe, and we got to tell them how good they were, but by the time we saw them, they were usually already pretty much completed. So we were asked to do original content, and because of that, we couldn't take the easy way out. We had to do games that were really had good story and were good games without falling back on the license. And so the question I asked Lauren was, would it be possible for fractals to be implemented on a microcomputer? And at first he said, well, I don't know if we could do that. Came back the next day and said, well, yeah, I think it might be possible. So we ended up doing was loaning him an Atari 800. He took it home, learned a 6502 assembly language in a couple of days. A couple of days later, he got a 3D landscape and fractals up on the computer. A few more days, he had to fly through it. And anyway, he was able to do it, and with a pretty good frame rate at the time of maybe 7 or 8 frames per second, which was great. At that time, I think the Microsoft flight simulators were running about 2 or 3 frames per second. So this is way better. So I wanted this to, we had to go. The game was going to happen, at least as an experiment, and I wanted to make it as good as possible. So I figured, okay, I'll get my inspiration from the pros. I wanted to do the cockpit design, so I requested all the information I could get from the Lucasfilm library to make it feel like you were flying an X-Wing, even though, of course, this wasn't in the Star Wars universe. And I got photos of the X-Wing's instruments. I have 3 or 4 of these, and so, okay, that's great. I got photos of what a real X-Wing cockpit looks like. Let's zoom in and get all the details exactly right so we know what to do. And then I adapted it for the Atari 5200. Let's zoom in so you get the details on this. Yeah. And this is what the game actually looked like. This is a screenshot of the game. So you can see we did get I'll show you a video in a minute to show this, but you can see we did get a real landscape. Unfortunately, of course, things pop in as you fly through, but you do get a randomized landscape, which is real in 3 dimensions. And every time you play the game, it's a different landscape, which is great. So let me show this video, see if it works. This was from this is from a press conference we did in 1984 after the first 2 games were done. We invited all the press to see what we had done. And I think I can double the size at least to make it work. Yeah. Resolution was way worse than this anyway, so you're not really losing any information. So what's going to happen here is the first part, an entire thing here is taken from the screen of the game. We don't want to show anything which wasn't game-based, so they didn't think that we were trying to cheat in any way. So the first part, after the logo, goes to black, and you hear voiceover. So let's make sure we get the sound up. And then we go to screen captures, basically the game in action. So let me run this, and I'll go back to the talk. Thank you. Well, you can see graphics have advanced just a bit since back then. But interestingly enough, story is still really important. And I'll come back to that in a second. But so the original design idea, I'm basically a pacifist. I didn't really want to do a shoot 'em up game. So my original design, there wasn't going to be any shooting. All the guns in the ship, in your ship, had been removed theoretically to create more space for pilots to bring on. And to destroy the enemy, the idea is you get them to follow closely behind you. You fly towards a mountain and veer away the last second, and they crash in the mountain because they're kind of stupid. But in retrospect, that was a really dumb idea. So we show the games to George Lucas. This is after a lot of the gameplay was in, at least the instrumentation. But his first question was, "Where's the fire button?" So I told him, I gave him all my theory and philosophy about not wanting to shoot people and all this. And he said, "Well, was it because it served the gameplay or because it served my personal values?" And I said, "Well, it's really a personal values thing." And he says, "Add a fire button." So I added a fire button. George also had the brilliant idea of the fact that the aliens would sometimes be the ones you're picking up. He wanted to see create some tension in the games so that it wasn't just automatically picking up pilots and going on, picking up pilots going on. So what we ended up doing was, of course we did what you just saw. First, I think 6 levels of the game, there are no aliens. They're called the Jaggies. The Jaggies never show up. And in the box, in the back of the box, in the documentation, and all the press that was done, we never mentioned them. And it was enforced that we kind of got everyone to buy in on that. All the press was willing to do that. So people who got the game, unless they heard about it from a friend, didn't know there were any Jaggies in the game. There was that piece that you heard with the woman talking that was taken straight out of the back of the manual. So you did get a hint there was something weird going on, but most people don't even read the manual. They didn't then, they still don't. And so we kind of counted on that, and I still get fan mail from people. I just want to read you one.